Hello, everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The barber's pole. Oscar sits in his barber's chair, reading the Trentonian on his iPhone, cataloging the day's stories for the early rush. Oscar pays special attention to the stock charts and the upcoming highway projects. People love to talk about making money and to complain about traffic. The bell rings and Michael walks in. He is a tall, well put together trader type in his early 30s, wearing a crisp white button-down and expensive men's Oxford shoes. Oscar yells, "Maria! Maria! Customer! Get in here, I need a wash." Oscar packs the espresso filter basket with Stumptown hair bender, espresso grinds, and tamps down the shot of brown powder. He purges the group head with a quick shot of steam, then locks the filter into the espresso machine and starts brewing. The dark, black espresso drips like droplets of dark, black blood. Drip, drip, drip. Then the platelets of the steamy brew ruffle out the lighter oils and gases, lathering them into a milky brown crema in the top of the white espresso cup. It looks like coagulating blood congealing around the white skin of a fresh wound. The association with blood unsettles Oscar. The thought of fresh red blood, thick and full, like pomegranate juice. The irresistible impulse to cut. His mind stirs with perverse thoughts that he cannot silence, even though it is before 9 o'clock a.m. The Oscar pours 2 shots of minty Sambuca Romana alongside the espressos. Something to take the edge off. "Hair of the dog that bit ya," Oscar says, thinking of bite marks on an arm and the serrated cuts of the canine teeth drawing out syrupy red nectar. "Here, sit down, and let's get you a wash." Oscar ushers Michael over to Maria's washing station and down into the sliding chair that leans back over the sink and pushes his head back over the neck rest. Oscar takes his shot and feels a gnawing in his stomach at the thought of blood, an unfathomable craving to drain life from the veins. Maria has inky black hair, still wet from her own morning shower. The fresh, earthy shampoo scents of lavender and mint waft off of her. She also has a hint of a touch of perfume, maybe a Chanel, tantalizing with a musky base and notes of fresh, dense jasmine and the acidic afterbite of citrus. She is college age, but too young to drink legally. Fresh and pure with clean blue eyes and smooth skin. She speaks in a sing-song way, softly, like a hushed breath. "Here, close your eyes. Here, is it too warm? Now, Relax your shoulders. Almost done. Oscar is making a trade on his dual trading screens in the corner to distract himself from his bloodlust while he waits for Michael's wash to be finished. Maria places Michael's head back under the mobile shower head, pours water over his forehead, and smooths the baby fine threads of silky blonde hair back with her soft hands and delicate, ringed fingers. Michael feels the warmth of her palm and the cold of her rings under the rushing water. Maria applies the shampoo and works it through his blonde, straight hair, massaging his forehead and pulling the lather and water back all the way down past his ears to his neck. Then she sits him up and begins toweling him off. "Ready?" Oscar says. He hands Michael his shot of liqueur, which he abruptly drinks, and then sits down in Oscar's chair and dons the barber's apron. "What'll it be? The usual?" As Michael nods, Oscar methodically cleans his Wall Pro Series clippers. He uses a brush to clear the blades and carriage, then sprays some sanitizing disinfectant, twice facing up, once facing down. He applies 3 or 4 drops of oil to the toe and heel of the blade. He runs the clipper, then wipes them down, and begins methodically fading the hair with different length settings to accomplish a clean skin fade. As Oscar cuts and the two men talk, Oscar notices a small skin lesion, a brown mark by the earlobe. It glistens in the fluorescent overhead lighting. "It's been rough," Michael says. "Hey, what do you think of this P&G stock?" Oscar asks. "I'm depressed, Oscar. I feel useless. I don't make any good decisions these days. I don't think you should take my advice on anything. The smell of barbasol is stirred up and invades the nose. A smell of oak moss, coumarin, and clove, intrusive as old eggs." She left him a note. "Dinner is on the table. I was tired," Oscar explains, trying to let Michael know that while it sucks to be out of work, it is a good time to reflect. After all, it is sometimes work that gets in the way of relationships. There is nothing like your own flesh and blood to drive you to madness. Now, it is time for the shave with the straight razor. Oscar reaches over his shoulders and unbuttons the top 2 buttons. He then takes a paper towel and places it over the back collar of the shirt. Oscar unbuttons the cape and drapes it loosely over the shoulders. He pulls out a fresh linen towel and lays it over Michael's right shoulder. He then grabs a hot towel from the towel warmer with a set of tongs and pats it on the chin, mouth, upper lip, and cheeks, while Michael leans his head back and enjoys the steam of the towel, laid now over his forehead and eyes. Oscar uses a small brush to foam the hot lather in a cup. "You have a little growth I haven't seen before," Oscar says. "Oh yeah," Michael says. "Here, take a look," Oscar says, showing him the mirror and where the little brown bump peeks out from the mounds of shaving foam. Huh, guess I do, Michael says. After your shave, you want me to lance it off? Oscar asks, hopefully. Yeah, guess so, Michael says reflexively. Oscar licks his lips, purses them, nods his head up and down, and feels the adrenaline of the thought of blood rise to his forehead. What a rush. Oscar takes the straight razor off the shelf. He takes a fresh blade from the paper wrapping and places it in the stabilizers by the shoulder of the blade. Oscar applies the hot lather and begins pulling the blade along the skin. The sound is close to Michael's ears and sounds like paper ripping, or like the sound of a rake on the sand. He keeps his eyes closed as Oscar finishes the shave. All the while, Oscar's heart is beating quickly, and his eyes are dilated and buggy in the mirror. A droplet of sweat forms on his brow. Just a small nick in the right spot. No. He mustn't think of it. He already has his treat. You ready? Oscar says. No time like the present, Michael tells him. Then Oscar applies pressure, and the blade slips into the skin, just below the imperfection. The slightest circular wince and a pull back out from the cut. As Oscar withdraws the blade and the lesion in one stroke, fresh, syrupy blood pools. The drip of blood. The whooshing sound of the blood flowing through the veins. The gurgle of coagulating blood, clotting and sealing the wound. Oscar feels giddy. There are goosebumps on the back of his neck, and he feels a jolt of adrenaline throughout his whole body. Oscar takes a styptic pencil to bind the wound. The saliva pools on the back of his tongue, looking at the juicy red drops. In a moment, the wound is treated, and all is well. See you in 2 weeks, Oscar says. Michael hands him a tip, pats his shoulder, and heads out into the bright midday sun. All afternoon, Oscar paces back and forth, turning the chair over with customer after customer. But the call of the blood is like a voice in his head. The dark impulses well up from an unknown source. Try as he might, Oscar can't put it out of his mind. Oscar knows that in medieval times, the barber's pole was a sign of the bloodletting that old-time barber surgeons would perform in their shops. The poles are blue for the veins revealed under a tourniquet, and red for the flowing blood. It was thought that draining one's blood into a metal dish would extract bad humors that caused disease. Barbers also performed amputations, pulled and cleaned teeth, set bones, and even delivered babies. But Oscar could not get the thought of blood out of his head. E.B. had gone down to Two Brothers Pizza and brought back an Italian sub that smelled like wet feet and oil. As he ate it in giant bites, Oscar thought of the gush of blood a bite into human flesh would make. Maria skipped over and plopped down in Oscar's chair. You want me to scrape clean all the baby hairs on the back of your neck? Oscar asks Maria. If it isn't too much trouble, she whispers. Oscar gets his blade ready and pulls up Maria's hair into a high bun, carefully making sure to get all of it held up in the air. Oscar applies the hot foam lather. He begins scraping clean the neckline, but he can see and feel the arteries and veins drawing up her neck. The sound of the blood vessels, the blue rivers running just below the surface, the smell of her Chanel perfume, the moist, young, supple skin. Oscar cannot resist the perverse longing for blood. He is disgusted with himself, ashamed. But the cut is everything. Almost done, Oscar says, tensing the blade in his hand and looking for his mark. Thank you so much, Maria says. But Oscar chooses his spot and dips the blade into the willowy flesh. A gush of blood spurts. A gusher. It spurts in a few plops, like a garden hose with your thumb over the nozzle. Then drips down onto the rim of her white crew neck shirt, pooling out into the linen fibers. Ow, she yells. Did you cut me? Just a little nick. That's all, Oscar says. But his heart is racing, and his hands are shaking from the excitement. He tends to her wound quickly, efficiently, and professionally, with great care. But Maria is not having it. I'm outta here, Pops. Until I get this looked at. Thanks a lot. Thanks for nothing, Maria says as she stomps out. But she will be back. Oscar smiles and pours himself some Sambuca Romana. E.B., he says, isn't it just the darndest thing how satisfying it is to make a clean cut? The fat apprentice barber looks up in shock. Red onion and ham hanging out of his mouth, and attempts a smile, totally at a loss for what his boss is talking about. Oscar searches online for a proper bleeding bowl. Obviously, there is no such thing on Amazon. So, Oscar chooses an elegant stainless steel reserve bowl. At $43, it is a luxury purchase. Next, Oscar has to get his hands on a fleam. This is the best way to do bloodletting. It is clean and precise and quick, unless you tap the blade too hard and sever an artery. One would be surprised how fast a femoral artery bleeds out. Oscar purchases some tourniquets and various medical supplies. What will someone think if they find out what he is up to? A few days have passed, and Oscar's order has arrived. And this is Oscar's chance. Marjorie sits in Oscar's chair. She is in her 70s, a large black woman who wears gorgeous dresses and maintains the vanity of a much younger woman. She has great, dyed black hair that falls in waves. The fat of her lips and jowls is all in the right places to make for an inviting face that warms and endears. Found a spot on my liver. Maybe that is what is giving me all these liver spots and spider veins, she says. Maybe, Oscar says with a knowing grin. What's that look for? She asks. Nothing. It's just that They used to have a way to purify the liver. Back a long, long time ago, in medieval times. Purify the liver. Oh, yes, please. I could use some of that, Marjorie says. It's a little gothic, if you know what I mean. It involves a cut in the arm and draining your blood, Oscar says, as matter-of-factly as he can. Are you missing a screw? She says. I didn't think you'd be interested. It's only for people who are really serious about maintaining a youthful look, Oscar says. Evil humors. Heavens to Betsy. What will they think of next? She asks. Like I said, not for you. I already knew when I brought it up. But I have had some who've had miraculous results, Oscar said. Now, these results, it can clear up the skin, she asks. You would never believe me if I told you. Takes off 10 years, Oscar says. More than that, if you cut too deep, I'd imagine, Marjorie says. Well, we are all finished with your cut, so if there's nothing, I'll do it, Marjorie says. What, really? Oscar asks. Of course. 10 years, I have to see for myself, Marjorie says. Oscar fastens the tourniquet below her bicep. The veins under her black skin come forward. Deep blue rivers. Oscar begins to sweat, and his hands grow damp. 1 second, he yells, rushing to the back room for his bleeding bowl and phlegm. In seconds, he emerges with the utensils. Marjorie is singing, Dit-da-dum, did-da-dum. Are you washed in the blood? In the soul-cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? As she hums and sings, Oscar sharpens the blade of the phlegm. He places the bleeding bowl on the floor below her left arm. Are you ready, Marjorie? Oscar asks in hushed tones. Are you ready? Let's get it over with already, she says. Oscar places the phlegm and its triangular blade just over the blood vessel on her left arm. It will just sting a bit, Oscar says, swinging his fist and digging the phlegm deep into her arm. Oh dear, Marjorie says. I already feel a bit lightheaded. Oscar sees the trickle of blood run down the arm to the fingers and the drip, 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 drip into the bowl. He grabs her bicep with pumping squeezes and says, More like this, Marge. This is better. Stop, Oscar. You are hurting me, Marjorie says. Just a little more, and it'll run good, Oscar says, with faraway eyes, glazed over in a helical madness. I'm losing too much blood, Marjoire cries. I'm going to bleed out. But Oscar cleans the wound with alcohol, does a quick butterfly stitch to seal the vein and the wound, and makes quick work with the bandages. Marjorie is ghastly pale. She gets up. She is trembling. She drops some money on the floor and turns and walks out in a trance. I won't be seeing her again, Oscar thinks, as the little bell sounds. And she leaves. In the back of the shop, with the blood bowl in hand, engorged in endorphins. Oscar observes the blood, sniffs it, puts in a finger, swirls it around, and indulges in a little taste. It tastes like steak. It tastes great. E.B. comes back from running errands and storms right up to Oscar when he walks in. "Boss, I got a call from Marjorie Jones on my way back over," E.B. says. "Did you get the inspection stickers?" Oscar says, referring to a little side business they have selling fake inspection stickers that are supposedly from the DMV. "Boss, that woman nearly died," E.B. says. "She was having skin problems, E.B. She was looking old. She proceeded at her own risk," Oscar says. "Oh yeah? You have a lawyer sort that one out?" E.B. asks. "It's nothing out of the ordinary," Oscar says. "Barbers have been doing it for hundreds of years. If you ever do anything like this again, I'm done. That's it," E.B. says. "The blood. It is the most extraordinary thing. Dark and also light. Substantial, but also fluid." "Are you losing it, Oscar? Are you literally going crazy?" E.B. asks. "You know the feeling when you give someone a perfect cut?" Oscar asks, and continues. "It is the same feeling. Exactly the same." "Whatever, boss," E.B. says, sitting down and stress-eating his second hoagie of the day. Oscar walks back into the back of the shop and sees the old hand-drawn sign in the corner. Oscar's unisex cuts, 8 to 8 MS. Oscar goes into the refrigerator and stirs his fingers in the blood, then puts his whole palm in. Then he takes a fresh, hot towel and submerges it in the bloody liquid. He pulls it out and finds the white barber's pole that he bought from the specialty shop. He wraps the towel helically around the pole. It is a helical swirl of red and white, the red splatter of real blood. He puts the plastic covering over it, walking past E.B., eating his sub. Oscar goes outside and stands by the storefront. He takes a hammer and starts installing his new barber's pole. He stands back, hands on hips, admiring his work. His eyes are bloodshot from the adrenaline, and his lips are red from the blood. The courthouse. Almost 8:30 a.m. It was just before court would begin when his dead client, Mr. Black, showed up to talk. Benny knew the consequences for being late, so was short with him. "Why are you here now?" He spoke in a hushed tone to the apparition in front of him, glancing around as the Alameda County courtroom began to fill up. It would ruin his reputation as the best public defender in the county if people thought he spoke to ghosts. Mr. Black's gray suit, the one he used to always wear, appeared now to fit him well. His cuffs were no longer frayed, the holes gone. Benny tasted the bitter shame of his failure with Mr. Black's case as his stomach knotted. "You owe me more." Mr. Black's voice was flat and emotionless, so different from his last day in this courtroom, when the coughs racked his body, his handkerchief filled with blood. Benny's elbows pressed into the table. The air in the courtroom hung thick and stale. His thin fingers nudged the yellow pad, straightening it imperceptibly. He moved his two pens, one black and one red, so that they were even to the pad. "I paid my debt," Benny whispered. With the last one. Mr. Black's anger roared like a fire, heating up the air around Benny like a blast furnace. The other, past inhabitants of this room, raged, their hate overwhelming him, even with so many clients. Benny prided himself that he cared about everyone, those he had saved from jail time, and those who were put away. Mr. Black was the first one to come back and visit him, though, after dying in prison, professing his innocence with his last breath. For the accused, Benny, king of the pleas, was the PD to get in, Alameda County. Most of his clients walked, or at least avoided jail time. Benny averaged 600 cases each year, however, so had some losses. And Benny felt the pain of everyone, but innocence and guilt have no place in the criminal justice system. And Benny had begun to wonder if his work meant anything. Some of his clients were monsters, and better off behind bars. Benny worked for his clients, but he lived in this city, had to deal with the crime and violence. Should he put his thumb on the scales of justice? Today, his past clients were weighing in, screaming in thunderous rage, frustration, and anger at what happened to them in this cursed room. I shouldn't be here. It's not my fault, one voice called out. I'm innocent, shouted another, then echoed over and over again into a cacophony, overwhelming Benny. Mr. Black's face leaned in to Benny, his voice roaring. Pay up, or else. Bang, bang, bang. A gavel thundered, echoing off the wood walls around him. Mr. Black left, fading into the crowd, and taking the voices with him. Benny released his breath, trying to focus on where he was and why. The court is called to order, the judge called out. A pale, gray man with red and piercing eyes. His head floated above his black cloak. Benny blinked, looking around as the colors of the room came into focus. A man in an ill-fitting suit slumped next to him, eyes downcast. Fear vibrated in waves off the man. The fingers of his left hand pick at the nails of his right, over and over. The scraping sound like claws on steel bars. He leaned over to Benny. Mr. Benny, we're going to be okay, right? You're going to save me. I mean, we have the receipt. It proves I wasn't there for the rape. They can't put this one on me. Benny nodded, but didn't turn. The man's high-pitched voice whined like a broken motor, his breath hot. Benny suddenly hated him, loathed him for being here and needing Benny's help. His life depended on Benny doing his job correctly. Did this man even deserve it? Benny peered toward him, just a glance out of the corner of his eye. Lean as a mop handle, he could not keep still, shoulders moving, fingers picking at imaginary flecks on his borrowed suit and the skin of his hands. Benny's lip curled in disgust. He opened the file, the case notes in perfect order, the receipt on top, stamped with proof of this man's location across town at the time of the sexual assault. The man's arm crossed in front of Benny, his skin red and mottled with sores. He pushed the receipt with a scarred finger. "My Monopoly card. Get out of jail free." He laughed. "I need to keep that. There are a few other girls they don't know about yet." The man winked. Benny brushed his fingers on the receipt. Manicured fingernails pale over his dark skin, smoothing the wrinkled paper. A loud rushing sound filled Benny's head. They called to him, his clients who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, whose lives he could not save due to a lack of this kind of solid alibi. He heard them screaming, shouting at the unfairness, the inhumanity. At the district attorney's table across from him, a tall, thin woman stared with shrewd, cold eyes. She turned away to put her head down into a stack of files. Voices cried out from her table too. People wronged and insulted in the worst way. Losing property, their self-respect, or their family, and then forced to sit in this horrible room and go home with nothing but tears and anger. Their voices were loud. "Punish! Vengeance! An eye for an eye!" The screams racked Benny's brain, and he shut his eyes. His hands flew to his temple, pressing in to quiet their cries. Bang, bang, bang. The gavel thundered again. Benny stood, motioning to his client to stand as well. Benny clenched his jaw and knew the answer to his dilemma. Forget what was best for the client or society. Benny needed to look out for himself. This man will be sacrificed to Mr. Black to appease him and the demons chasing Benny. This man was guilty, of course. Maybe not for this crime, but for another, Benny was certain. Benny will change places, go from the defender to the accuser, from the protector to the judge. His fingers moved, just a brief sweep, and the paper receipt floated unseen, down out of the file, into the trash can. Gone. The trial moved fast. A police officer, serious and trustworthy in his pressed blue uniform, pointed at the man next to Benny. "That's the guy." Whispers erupted from the courtroom. Bodies shifted on the wooded seats, squeaking with their movements. "That man is just evil. I could tell right off," someone said. "The monster should hang for what he did to that girl." Another voice added. Bang, bang, bang. Justice thundered down from on high. "The verdict is guilty," the judge shouted, a sneer on his face. "Next." Benny squeezed his eyes shut as the voices in his head roared out, echoing, "Guilty! Guilty!" The bailiff pulled on the man next to him. "No, I'm innocent," he screamed. "Mr. Benny, what happened?" Mr. Black appeared in front of Benny, nodding before he left, with the man to his future hell. Then the voices were gone. the sudden silence deafening. Benny picked up his red hen to carefully put a small X to the end of the line of thousands of black and red marks, then lifted the next file off the foot-high stack next to him. Justice will be done. Gardenia. The family left Gardenia around 5 in the morning. They quietly packed their things and left, stopping only to clean the fridge, because they felt strongly that a dirty fridge would speak poorly of them and their abrupt departure. When they left, the fridge was clean, and there was still blood all over the walls. The blood did not belong to anyone in the family. It had started pouring down from the ceiling, and the family decided that was the final straw. It was one thing when specters appeared at the top of the stairs with 2 heads and horns. It was another when knives were flying across the kitchen, narrowly missing the head of the family's youngest, who was only 2. It was startling when the family dog suddenly grew to 5 times its size and ate the family's sedan. All of that was unfortunate. But the family had gotten Gardenia for a steal. They were apprised that it had a colorful past. They were a bit put off by it, but then they saw the guest bathrooms, and the very thought of having guests, let alone guest bathrooms, was simply too good to pass up. It took blood coming down the walls 3 weeks later for them to vacate. Once they were gone, the bloody devil manifested out of the television and made itself a sandwich. It was proud of the family. When they had first moved in, it hadn't expected them to last more than a few days. It figured the first time the lights flickered and the cicadas swarmed the toilet, they'd be out the door. That was the thing about some families. You never quite knew how much they were willing to put up with for a house with a fireplace and good insulation. The bloody devil ran its clawed paw along the wall and licked up a smidge of blood. This batch was too spicy, it said to itself. I should have used less red pepper. That night, as the bloody devil was falling asleep in the guest bathroom tub, it heard a sound. When it opened its 5th eye, it saw what looked like a little girl standing in the doorway of the bathroom. For a second, the bloody devil thought the little girl was one of the daughters from the family that had fled that morning. But when it blinked, the girl was gone. Just to be safe, the bloody devil turned off all the lights in the house so it could scan the darkness for any signs of living energy. When nothing turned up, it chalked the whole experience up to a bad dream. It returned to its bath, but when it did, it found that the shower had been turned on and steam had filled the room. There, on the mirror, was a message written in what appeared to be a human hand. We're back. From that day forward, the bloody devil, who had haunted Gardenia since the day it was built on top of a collapsed pagan temple, never knew a moment's peace. Children's toys would materialize in the living room. Toys with sharp edges and wheels that the bloody devil would step on, yowling as it fell backwards into the fireplace. Dirty dishes were somehow always in the sink, despite the bloody devil only eating off Ouija boards. At night, as it tried to sleep, it could hear the sound of a man and a woman in the next room. I'm telling you, we don't have the money to stay an extra night. We'd have the money if you took that job my father offered you. We've been over this, Natalie. I am not taking a handout from your father, so I guess you have to tell the kids why we're leaving Orlando early then. The conversation didn't scare the bloody devil as much as it made it very, very anxious. Were Natalie and the man going to stay together? They sounded so unhappy. Were they going to break up? Why was he hearing this when they weren't even here? That wasn't the only time it heard voices. You are not going out dressed like that, young lady. Jessie's mother lets her go out like this. That's why Jessie's going to end up in a documentary someday. What does that even mean? The bloody devil would hide behind the couch whenever these arguments were going on. It couldn't locate the source of the voices, no matter how hard it tried. But it also couldn't bear to just sit on his throne, made of vole skulls, and pretend it didn't hear the conflicts. They were always so domestic. It preferred higher stakes, life and death, passion and terror. Hearing a mother and daughter go at it because the daughter put on too much eyeliner made the bloody devil want to rip off one of its two heads, the one with the ears. After a century of living in and haunting Gardenia, it was the taco night that made the bloody devil abandon the house. It wasn't expecting any trouble, what with it being a Tuesday, and what with taco night always being something the family seemed to look forward to, based on what the bloody devil could surmise going off only voices and the satisfied sounds of chewing, while a mysterious odor of sour cream and pico filled the air. It made the bloody devil hungry, but it couldn't eat anything because there didn't appear to be any food there. It was torturous being exposed to such lovely aromas without being able to feast. It tried to placate itself by gnawing on the leg bone of a unicorn, but it just wasn't the same. The taco night started out fine, as best the bloody devil could tell. Plates were laid out, soft shells were placed next to hard shells, and the dad made a corny joke about tortillas, as he always did. Groans followed. Then some clanking of silverware and the sound of mastication. The bloody devil bit down on what little bit of meat was left on its unicorn leg, but it fantasized about what the ground beef must taste like when covered with shredded cheese and lettuce. That was when one of the daughters announced that she wouldn't be attending her own high school graduation. The bloody devil had no idea why the teenager chose this instance to make such an announcement, when everybody seemed to be having such a nice time. But as far as the bloody devil could tell, this was just something teenagers did. They found themselves in a pleasant moment and felt a compelling urge to ruin it. Right away, there was a fracas. The mother informed her daughter that she absolutely would be going to graduation because she and her husband did not work and save to send their daughter to a fancy private school, only so that she could skip the grand finale. The daughter then pointed out that the mother doesn't work, so really, it's just the father who should decide if the daughter has to go to graduation. There was a pause. While the bloody devil imagined, the mother waited on the father to back her up. But then the father just said, "I didn't go to my graduation either." And then the mother exploded on the father, which led to the teenage daughter shouting in defense of her father, while the youngest child cried, and one or two middle children began to loudly sing some song about gravy and a turkey's neck for no discernible reason, other than maybe trying to diffuse the tension or quell their own anxiety. At one point, it sounded as though someone, probably the mother, went around picking up the various plates full of soft shells and hard shells and pico, and began smashing them on the floor. This led to more noise, and somebody ran out the front door, slamming it behind them. The sound of the door slamming was like a shot going off inside the bloody devil. It had to leave. It had no choice. It couldn't live like this. Maybe it should have stuck around for the children. After all, the bloody devil might have been made from the nightmares of demons and the spirit of Lucifer. But it was at least civilized enough to know that children need a stabilizing force in their lives. And maybe the bloody devil could provide them for them. But how? No, it was no use. Sticking around wasn't a good idea for anyone. The bloody devil left Gardenia around 5 a.m. the very next day. Shortly after it departed, the family returned back to the home. They had taken a Ouija board from the fridge before they left. The bloody devil was always leaving its dirty Ouija boards in the fridge. They soon discovered that the board was a kind of portal into the house, and when they saw the bloody devil growing comfortable in their home, it made them angry. Not angry enough to do anything about it, of course. A bloody devil was still a bloody devil. They had no intention of going back. But soon, living in the rental home they occupied after leaving Gardenia started to feel suffocating. They began to argue. The eldest daughter began to act out. The middle children took to writing scary messages in steam in the small bathroom they all shared just to scare their youngest sibling. Toys were left everywhere. It all built up to a taco night that was, without question, one of the worst nights in the family's history. It wasn't until the next morning when one of the middle children brought the Ouija board to her mother as she was tossing another dirty dish in the sink. She pointed out that the bloody devil appeared to have left Gardenia. Natalie, the mother, moved the board all around so she could see each part of the house And sure enough, there was no sign of the bloody devil anymore. "Well," she said, "I suppose that means we can go back. As for the bloody devil, he never went back to Gardenia. But that's probably for the best. It doesn't mean he loves the family any less. But that's mostly because he never loved them in the first place. Am I living in a haunted house? I lay in bed reading a horror book when I see movement from the corner of my eye coming from the other side of the closed curtain. I slowly lower my book, my mind screaming at me not to. There is a shadow floating on the right side of my window. At first, I thought it was the shadow of the flag, flapping in the wind, but quickly realized this is no flag. I stare at the shadow as it moves up, then to the left, then down, then to the right, before repeating the cycle again. "What the heck is it?" I mutter. The shadow changes shape repeatedly until it stops, and now resembles the head of a dragon. At first, my curiosity peaks, but then an unexplainable fear overtakes my senses, and I am on the verge of leaping out of bed. Whatever is distracting me does not bring peace my way, but a terror that will affect my lifetime. I thank God the curtain remains closed, for I do not care to see what is producing that shadow, for I had a feeling it will cause my sanity to leave me. Yet there seems to be an unknown force pulling me to the curtains. The shadow floats by my window for eternity, haunting me. I cannot pull my eyes from this shadow. Thankfully, it eventually dissipates, and I can relax. A weight lifts from my body, and the fear dissipates. I get up from the bed, wondering if I should go over to the window and throw open the curtains or exit the room. "Restroom break," I say to myself as I open the door and walk down the hallway to the bathroom. This is the first eerie episode I had encountered in this house I recently occupied. A one-story home with a garage, living room, dining room, kitchen, laundry room, 3 bedrooms, and 1.5 bathrooms. No talk of evil spirits by the past owners, but would they honestly say such to me? For they did not look like such fools. They were the first occupants when the house came into existence, and all went well for them. That is what they say to the ignorant future owner. For the next week, I did my best to explain the bizarre episode. At first, a floating balloon entangled by the pole of the flag, but I never saw a balloon changing shapes by itself. My imagination tends to run wild, especially when I am reading a book. Could this be my imagination at work? I purchased a couple of small dogs to keep me company not long after. Not intimidating to the human world, but hopefully toward the ones from the beyond. It made me feel much better to have another living being in my house. A month went by when the next episode took place in my house. "Get out of there!" I call out to Bingo, the mischievous one, who is trying to get into the fireplace for I have thrown the covering to the bacon into the place. As I went back to the recliner, I thought I heard a noise come from the back door. I stop in my tracks and listen for a time, but only hear Bingo moving about. I look around, not seeing Ringo, so possibly him. The dog's food and water dish are in the laundry room, close to the back door, so very will possible, so thought nothing of the matter as I go over to sit, and back to the book on the Crusades. Not long after I started reading, I heard the noise again. It sounded like something tapping on the door, then tapping the floor, then back to tapping the door. I sat there for about a minute, listening to the episode. "Ringo!" I called out. The tapping stopped. What is that dog doing? I get ready to walk around the corner and into the kitchen to the laundry room, when I hear a distinct sound that stops me in my tracks. The sounds of a heavy boot walking from the laundry room toward where I am. I look around, trying to find something to use as a weapon. I see the small baseball bat lying next to the chair. I quickly grabbed the bat as the steps came closer. I raise it up, ready for the intruder to come around the corner. If the intruder has a gun, my life will end. But I will get in a good swing or two, I hope. I continue to wait as the footsteps cross the kitchen floor, but seems to be taking too long to appear in front of me. I stand there, not sure what to do. The steps stop, and the anxiety goes up. For is the intruder going to appear, or do I go to it? I ponder if I should call out, but it would more than likely come out as a squeak, so kept my mouth shut. Perspiration covers my body as fear grips me. I stand for who knows how long, trying to decide what to do. Decision abruptly comes forth as I step forward toward the kitchen, with the bat raised to swing. I near the entrance to the kitchen, wondering if I should jump out or peek around the corner. Just get it over with, I thought. I leaped out, prepared to swing, but there was no one there. Instead, Ringo looked up at me. I looked toward the laundry room, seeing no movement. "There is no way you could have made those sounds," I said to Ringo. Ringo walked past me into the living room, leaving me to confront the intruder. I meandered through the kitchen toward the laundry room, preparing for the intruder to leap out. But when I entered the laundry room, there was no one there. I checked the doorknob, locked. What could have created those noises? I muttered. There was only one other place I had not checked out, and that was past the laundry room and into the bathroom. The room only had a sink and a toilet, so there was no space for the perpetrator to hide. I walked to the bathroom, seeing no one in the room. I went over to the window and saw it latched shut. "Nothing," I said. I turned around and was about to leave the bathroom when I heard the footsteps again. They started on the other side of the kitchen, coming toward me, but my eyesight saw nothing. I grabbed the doorknob and slammed the door shut as the steps entered the laundry room. I quickly locked the door as the steps came up to the door and stopped. I had the bat raised, ready for whatever tried to break in. If I still had my sanity, I would realize the bat would do nothing to my invisible terror. What am I experiencing? I thought. Too much horror I'm taking in that is bringing madness upon me. I am not a believer in ghosts. But is this what I am encountering? Am I living in a haunted house? I mutter. As I mutter the words, I hear the tapping on the floor, then on the back door, then back to the floor. This went on for a time before it stopped. Then the footsteps started up again, heading to the other end of the kitchen, ending. I slowly opened the door, seeing there was no one around. I need to get out of this area. I rushed toward the living room, at one moment feeling quite cold, but soon I was in the living room by the fireplace. Both dogs lay on the couch, looking at me. "What is your problem?" I can imagine them saying. I went over to the coffee table and grabbed the remote control, put on some sound, and hopefully that will calm me down. I turned on the television and turned up the volume. I did not want to hear the footsteps and the tapping. Part of me wanted to leave the house, to never return. The other half, thinking whatever was creating the noise was not causing me any harm, just freaking me out, I muttered. But not freaking my dogs out. I sat down in my chair, with the bat nearby, knowing the bat was useless against a ghost. But it was reassuring to have it near me. Anyway, the rest of the night, I sat in the chair watching the tube, then dozed off to wake up an hour later, wondering if the ghost was still around. There is no way I'm going in that kitchen. I eventually dozed off again, waking up off and on throughout the night. My day at work was miserable due to lack of sleep. I spent the entire time contemplating on what I should do. I could move out, but then I would end up losing much money and wind up in an apartment, which I do not want to do. I could go to a church and have a priest bless the house. I could have a psychic or ghost hunter come in, or just live with it and get over my fears. If harm did not come my way, then I should be okay. But what about my sanity? It could make it an interesting home life, I muttered. My life was dull overall, so the reason I read so much of the fantastical. Living this kind of life in my house might be interesting. Of course, part of me screaming I was insane to have such thoughts. It came to me living at the house, encountering footsteps once a month, and little odd things happening. At first, scared, but eventually I became numb. Soon, I was like my dogs, and just enjoyed the roof over my head, no matter how bizarre it was to live under it. The green-eyed monster. Beware, for my appetite is hard to satisfy. Once I have sunk my teeth into you, savored your particular taste, it is very hard for me to let go. Think of when you suck juices from the bone, relishing every last drop of roasted meat, or the times when you lick the plate greedily, trusting that no one is watching, sauce dripping from your chin. That is like me, feasting on a most delectable dish. You do not need to be marinated, tenderized, or steeped in spices. I enjoy you quite as you are, yet it is remarkable, your ability to flavor yourself to my liking. Sometimes sweet, sometimes salty, always spicy hot. Oh yes, the dish you serve might seem slow, cooked, but passion is always the flame that roasts you in the end. Basted in your own juices, I just turn the spit, watching the flames lick higher. Curse me if you will, mock me if you must, but I only gnaw on your bones because you tempt me. And like a dog with a bone, you know I must leap and grab, shaking you in my jaws. Yes, you can say my appetite disgusts you, this frenzied feeding. But I am only such a glutton because you heap my plate ever higher. If I feast, it is only because you throw such rich pickings my way. I grow, fatten myself on your largesse. The bounty of you, scabs on your knees and scars upon your heart. I lurk in the shadows of your nursery, sniffing out the moment that is ripe for me to bare my teeth and bite. Your baby sister, silhouetted against the nursery window, wreathed in light. Your mother dozes in the rocking chair. The words of a lullaby stream from her mouth, even in sleep. She rocks and croons and kisses the little head. You wonder at this new picture, this piece, so smooth compared to the rough and tumble of time with you. At the door you watch, suddenly an intruder in your own home. Knowing the interloper can't enter, mustn't break this peace as then noise. Babies' cries will cut like glass, scenting the air. I smell the musk of your mother's slumber. The baby's sweet new smell, clean of the reek of age and pain, and what you feel when I sink my fangs into you for the first time. You flinch. Of course you do, and try to shake me off. But I clamp down all the harder. Look, I say, shaking you like the rag doll that used to bring you comfort. Look at how she holds her up to your father. Look at how he is enfolding them both in his arms. Where are you in this golden circle? A dark shadow, cast out and forgotten. I bite until I feel your resolve snap, a broken wishbone, and then I know you're a dish I can feast upon my whole life long. I eat my fill and lay you down, chewed, stripped clean, only able to lie there, staring up into my clear green eyes. But sometimes sweet treats can sicken. That first taste, like a candy kiss, can cloy, and soon it is salty foods I crave. I wait my time, hunger growing, growling in the pit of my stomach, louder as the years pass. When I can wait no longer, I prowl to the pitch where you practice every week. Coach is handing out the accolades: best pass, best team player, and the one you covet, man of the match. He walks down the line and stops by your best friend, shaking him by the hand, slapping him on the back. Stealthily, I latch onto your ankle and sink my teeth into your soft, pliable, and welcoming flesh. And with a small whimper, you let me feed. Others go to the locker, get washed and changed. And you stand there, alone. I gourd and guzzle, while you watch him and the girl you long to talk to, a dancing moth around his flame. Yes, sometimes the salt you baste yourself in, week after week, game after game, night after night, streaming down your face and soaking your pillow, tastes sweeter than all the candy you can buy. But what is my particular favorite, you ask? Well, as you're a fellow epicure, and you won't let it rest, I'll confess. Steep yourself in spices, give it all a good cayenne kick. Set my mouth on peppery fire, for I like a blast of heat the best. Passion. Yes, that is the marinade you should steep yourself in. Ladle after ladle of thick, oozing passion. And you, poor, tender fool, that is just what you do. Watching them kiss after he brings the cup home for the team, picturing them hand in hand, kicking up the leaves as the autumn wind lifts their hair and hearts. And as Christmas sweeps in, her snowy mantle wrapped tightly about her, you are roasting in the furnaces of hell. Lying down in the heat you radiate, I feed and feed, growing fatter than the goose and all its trimmings. Glistening with fat, I bask in the gluttony you permit me, my green eyes forever trained on you. Indulged, I wax corpulent, rolling with my folds, a Falstaff with fangs. Still you toss me titbits, curled in your bed, picturing your lover, encircled by another's arms. He is faceless, nameless, a fear-made flesh which you feed me from your hand. We are never satiated. Even when we walk down the aisle, turn and watch. With predatory eyes, the vision of your lovely bride, regarding you now, more morsel than meat, like a thin scrape of butter on a meager scrap of bread. I feel almost compelled to apologize on the behalf of others. Such a shame the family never comes to fatten you up, or that sporty friend doesn't pop round for a beer. And your wife? Well, perhaps the less said there, the better. At least, you can rely on me, patting my head. I'm your trusty companion, no longer a loathed monster, rather a loyal pet, forever walking at your side. My brain through your brain, was an optimist. And so, naturally, was the thing that lived in her brain. She awoke one Tuesday morning to discover the change. At first, it was merely a mental echo, barely perceptible. Two indistinguishable minds, one off by a fraction of a second. For Katie's every thought, there was an echo, trailing just behind. Over the day, the new brain drifted further out of sync, and soon she could hear its thoughts, almost identical to hers, but distinct. Eventually, they started talking. "Who are you?" Katie asked. "Katie Singleton," the voice said from inside her head. "That's me." "You're new in there." "I guess so," the voice said. "Sorry." "Don't be sorry." Katie was an over-apologizer too. "What should I call you?" "It's hard to get past Katie," the voice said. "How about Princess Penelope?" Katie asked. It was the name she'd given her imaginary friend when she was an 8-year-old princess junkie. Princess Penelope had filled a void. Playmate, partner in mischief. The sister she never had. The voice was as thrilled as Katie was. It remembered the same childhood. "I love it," she said. "I feel so fabulous. I'm Princess Penelope." Katie wondered what her therapist would have to say about all this, but decided to just go with it. It was nice to have someone like-minded to talk to. They quizzed each other as Katie waited for the morning train, phone held to her ear so onlookers would think there was a real person on the other end of the conversation. "Favorite color?" Princess Penelope asked. "Turquoise," they said together. "Turquoise." "Movie?" Katie asked. "Eternal Sunshine," they replied simultaneously. Eternal Sunshine. "Guilty pleasure food?" "Rocky Road," Katie said, as Princess Penelope replied, "Raw meat." Katie paused, puzzled. It was the first discordant note of their friendship. The train arrived, and they got on. Together, of course. "You seem distant," Noah said. It was Sunday morning. They were burrowed under covers, hiding from the daylight. "Just like eternal sunshine," Princess Penelope noted. Katie had thought the same thing. She smiled. It was like having a sister, a twin. Noah waited for a response. "See?" he said. "You're somewhere else." Katie had felt disconnected from Noah well before the appearance of her invisible friend. Their relationship was stagnant, all unhealthy patterns. She pretended to laugh at his jokes. He feigned interest in her plans. "So, what is it?" He seemed more annoyed than concerned. When she moved to the city to be with him, everyone said that she was moving too fast, that it was a bad idea. In time, Katie realized that they were right. She and Noah didn't really know each other, didn't even like each other. "Did you meet someone?" She traced the line of his jaw with her index finger. Gently. "Can't we just be quiet together?" she asked. Noah sighed, but pulled her close anyway. "I'd love for us to tell him," Princess Penelope said, "but he'd never understand." At the market for dish soap, Katie became distracted by the meat aisle, she settled on a pound of ground chuck. Leanest she could find, 98% fat-free. It made her feel less guilty about the purchase. "It's okay," said Princess Penelope. "You know, pregnant women also crave protein." Katie didn't see the relevance, but didn't argue. The woman at checkout eyed her suspiciously. Katie wondered if there was something in their demeanor that called attention to them. "Are our eyes twitching?" Katie asked Princess Penelope aloud. "Excuse me?" the woman behind the counter responded. Katie quickly took her bag and went to the alley out back. By the dumpsters, she tore through the plastic wrap and pulled out handfuls of ground beef, squished it between her hands, into her mouth. Her teeth released saturated blood from spongy tissue to drip down her throat. Princess Penelope almost cried inside her, and Katie felt sustained in a way that was new to her, supercharged. "Oh, God." She buried her face in the package of meat, gobbling like a starved mutt, sucking down every stray drop of juice until her tongue lapped against the styrofoam backing. "Oh, God, what are you?" Katie asked. Noah slept in the bedroom. They'd barely spoken that evening. When she came in from work, he told her she looked sick. It was true. She'd examined herself in the bathroom mirror, cheeks hollowed from lost weight, bags under her eyes, dark as bruises, thinning hair, chapped lips, sores. Still, his words hurt her feelings. Princess Penelope's, too. Now Katie sat on the couch, streaming shows she'd already seen. A shield of noise so Noah wouldn't hear her talking. "I don't know," Princess Penelope answered. "A figment of my imagination? Some part of my brain? I don't think so," Princess Penelope said. "I exist. I'm not a stray thought, or a ghost, or anything like that. But what do you look like? I can't tell. I only see my brain. Through your brain, if that makes sense." "It does," Katie said. "I think there's something you saw, or maybe read. A clue. I'm going to look." Princess Penelope could find memories Katie had lost. It was a wonderful secret shared between them. Her internal friend could call up, with perfect clarity, forgotten birthday parties, replay, word for word, conversations with friends who'd moved away, recover romantic feelings for Noah from those blissful first months when he'd been her lifeline in an unfriendly new city, rescue her mother's smile when she'd been happy, her father's when he'd been alive. "Let me know if you figure it out," Katie said. Princess Penelope went quiet while she searched, and Katie felt lonelier than ever. Shows replayed in front of her, and she didn't bother clicking yes when the "still watching" prompt appeared. She fell asleep sitting up. No transition. Her brain just clicked off like a light. "Wake up," Princess Penelope said. Katie opened her eyes. She stood in the bedroom, facing a wall. "What's going on?" she asked. "Don't be mad," Princess Penelope said. "What happened?" Katie willed herself to turn from the wall and realized that she couldn't. Princess Penelope was in control. "I won't be mad," Katie said. "Just show me." "In a minute," Princess Penelope said through their mouth. Now she was the one using it. "I realized what it was. You saw a video in high school, science class. The zombie wasp. It played in their head. National Geographic. Wasp larvae take over a caterpillar while feeding on it from the inside, directing it to gorge itself until they're ready to eat their way out." "You're a wasp?" Katie asked. "Something smaller, I think," Princess Penelope said. "But the same idea. Some kind of bug, maybe." "A bug?" Crawling around inside her skull. It was too unsettling. Like an itch you could never hope to scratch. "I know," said Princess Penelope. "It's icky." Again, Katie tried to turn her head. Nothing. The muscles of her body were completely disconnected from her thoughts. "Show me what happened," Katie pleaded. Their head tilted down, and Katie saw their hands, covered to elbows in blood. The rest of it. "Please." They turned from the wall, and Katie saw it. Bedspread spattered red. Hammer slathered in gristle. Flesh and bone chips. Tools. Kitchen utensils. Noah disassembled. Chest slashed. Innards strewn. Organs in a pile. Some half-eaten. Sightless eyes staring. Head cracked open. Skull emptied. "I realized what I was really craving," Princess Penelope said. "I didn't want to wake you, but it was delicious. You have no idea." Katie saw everything. Her degraded face in the mirror. Aches all over. New ones every day. The way the light from the bedside lamp now gave her headaches. That sour smell she didn't recognize on her own breath. "I'm the caterpillar." "I think so, Katie," Princess Penelope said with real sympathy. "But I'll go on. Don't know if it helps, but your memories will live in me." Katie felt herself cry, but no tears came. She imagined them falling inwardly, pooling in her steadily shrinking chamber within the brain that had once been hers. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. Let's get ice cream." Rocky Road? It was a nice thought. Princess Penelope knew her so well, the sculptor of Lyon. Jacques heard someone enter his fifth-floor studio, heard the heavy groan of the old wood door, heard the tired thing thunder back into place, slamming with a finality that said no more. And it was the only thing that stopped him from pitching forward from his balcony into the street below. Rich heels snapped against the scuffed parquet floor, and the boards underneath strained against the weight of every step the stranger took. "Hello?" came a man's voice. Jacques relit his cigarette for the fourth time and looked out over Lyon. His studio was the top floor of a tower, sitting in the crook of the Saône, and he had a lovely view of the Pont de la Feuillée. They still called it the New Bridge, even though it had been reconstructed nearly a decade ago, in 1841. He could just see one of his lions from this angle, a stoic beast carved of marble, watching over the people of the city as they crossed the bridge. One of his first commissions. "Hello?" came the man's voice again. It was curious but calm, familiar but unrecognizable, a voice that tugged at his memories and hid at the corner of his eye. Jacques huffed. If he should fall from his balcony, he'd tumble 5 floors and strike the cobble below. With luck, head first. But it would leave a mess for his landlady. And besides, he had company. But the Pont de la Foyer. If he snuck out at night, he might throw himself to the mercy of the Saône and let it wash away the grayness of his life. "Hello? Jacques? Out here." He flicked the last of his cigarette over the railing. On the balcony, the steps drew close, and only once Jacques felt the presence of another beside him did he turn. And Jacques, startled, beside him stood a man dressed head to toe in rich reds and blacks, accented with gold buttons and chains and jewelry. His boots were buckled with gold. His hands were covered in black satin gloves, and upon his head sat a broad-rimmed hat with a white feather in the band. The clothes screamed wealth, if not style, though perhaps they whispered a style to come. "Monsieur Desrosiers." Jacques cleared his throat. "Pardon me, sir, but I was not expecting you." "No matter." Monsieur Desrosiers smiled and patted Jacques on the shoulder. "I've come to take a look on my commission." Something cold shifted in Jacques' bowels. The commission. It was the one thing he didn't want to think about, and the one thing he couldn't stop thinking about. It was beautiful. It was hideous. And for better and worse, it was the only thing that kept him alive. If it hadn't been for the chance encounter with Monsieur Desrosiers 3 months ago, on a moonless, foggy night, when Jacques planned to get well drunk and then to go looking for trouble, whether in the dark alleys of Lyon, or in the waters of the Saône, or by means of the loaded pistol he kept in his pocket, he might finally have been done with it all. But when they ran into each other just outside Fournier's, Monsieur Desrosiers insisted they enter the bar and share wine. And when Jacques told him of his misery, of his heartache, of giving up, Monsieur Desrosiers insisted further. "I can't do it anymore," Jacques said. "Every breath I draw is torture. All I want is to hold her again, to feel her skin against mine. There's no greater pain than that of the heart," said Monsieur Desrosiers. "But this is the well from which we draw art. Tell me, what do you intend to do with the piece?" "I don't know. I will smash it." "Impossible," Monsieur Desrosiers said. There was no alarm in his voice, just a statement of fact. "I'll not hear another word. I'm commissioning you to finish it." And the price he offered, coupled with the wine, was not something Jacques could refuse. Jacques lit another cigarette. "This way, sir." He took his patron to his workshop, a dusty place filled with statuettes, busts, blocks of various stones, and wooden frames, a place dominated by a column of a man's height, covered by a white cloth that promised severe edges. A stool sat before it, and hammers and chisels littered the floor, scattered like afterthoughts. "Show me," said Monsieur Desrosiers, circling the covered statue. "It's not finished. It cannot possibly be finished. Art never is. Reveal it. It's grotesque. A cruel mockery. Impossible. Your hands are magical. They sing to the stone. Come, do not keep me waiting." Jacques tarried only a moment longer, and then listlessly he pulled at the cloth. There was a radiant Gaia. "Marvelous," said Monsieur Desrosiers. "She's simply magnificent." He touched the cold marble, placed his hands on the midriff, ran his palm up the perfectly smooth abdomen, cupped an ice-cold breast. Jacques felt his throat harden. Said Monsieur Desrosiers, his thumb and forefinger cradling a nipple. "Such attention to detail. So like the real thing." His hand slid to the abdomen again, and then began sliding lower, following her contours, following the map of her muscles and flesh. Lower, ever lower. "Sir." Jacques grabbed the other's hand. "Sir, please, it's unfinished, very delicate." Monsieur Desrosiers locked eyes with him for just a moment, but then a wide grin bloomed on his face. Of course. How boorish of me to interfere with the genesis of art. But I tell you, you have made an exquisite piece here. It's so like life." Jacques felt the cold in his guts roil. He beheld the work that consumed him, the statue of Camille, the torso of Camille, rather. She stood on the stumps of her hips, and she had no arms. Neither had he been able to bring himself to carving her head, her precious face. Not yet. Not ever, perhaps, but lifelike? Yes, Jacques had to admit that was true. He knew the map of her. His fingers had traced her every path, and he'd drunk deeply of her, gotten lost in her shallows. He couldn't count the nights they'd spent in soft embrace, or the fervent daylight moments they'd stolen together. There was no greater love, he knew, and she was forevermore his heart. It was Monsieur Desrosiers that had introduced them. And Monsieur Desrosiers, his enigmatic patron, the man who discovered Jacques, who secured his first commissions and helped him build a name for himself. The man convinced of magic hands, convinced that there was nothing they could not sculpt. The man who knew very well what he was doing when he brought Jacques and Camille together, and then left them alone. Ah, but this cold, dead stone. It merely looked like Camille once. Looked like her before her death. before her murder. It was hard and unyielding, and had none of the vibrant warmth of the real thing, of his muse. This was a horrid effigy, and no more. "You have outdone yourself," Monsieur Desrosiers said. "Truly, your work honors my niece." "It's unfinished," Jacques whispered. "I have a hunch it soon will be. I've a sense for these things, as you know. No magic hands myself, but a sense about art, yes. Now come, we will celebrate your progress and looming breakthrough." Monsieur Desrosiers brought libations. They started with wine and moved on to absinthe, and all the while Monsieur Desrosiers talked about his views on art, and how through it he firmly believed man could pierce the veil through force of will alone, he said, to create, like God. Jacques's vision swam, but Monsieur Desrosiers seemed cogent no matter how much he downed. But the conditions must be right. We must truly want it, as only the empty heart of the artist wants. "Soon," Monsieur Desrosiers said, "you are my most prized sculptor in all of my stables. Soon you will prevail. I don't doubt it. Now I leave you to it." Jacques finished what remained of the bottles after his guest departed, deep in the black of night. The man was strange, and always appeared at just the right time, or just the wrong time. It was M. Desrosiers that introduced him to Camille, and then later introduced him to the news of her death. It was he that found her, strangled, they said, among the rose bushes on the family estate. The murderer never found. It was he. Jacques didn't know if it was he. M. Desrosiers was the last to see her alive. That didn't mean anything. Besides, it was disrespectful to harbor such suspicions about the man who funded him. Besides, it was too terrible to consider. If Monsieur Desrosiers had played a role. If instead of doing something about it, Jacques had merely taken those funds. Jacques downed the rest of the absinthe and settled into fitful, fanciful dreams. In his mind, Camille came back to him. He embraced her statue, and in the moonlight, she turned into his lost love. They danced through the night and laughed, and he twirled her faster and faster. 1,000 questions filled his mind. How had she returned? What was the other side like? Did she still love him? Did she know he still loved her? But all were strangled by his pressing need to hold her, to have her. They loved like it was their last day, their first day, their only day. And he fell asleep in her embrace, tangled in sheets, feeling the warmth of her touch once more. By morning, that touch had grown cold. He awoke to a piercing headache and found himself draped over the unfinished statue, the headless, faceless cadaver, the armless, and legless corpse. The pale imitation of a woman whose voice he could barely remember, whose touch he craved more than breath itself, cold, 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 but soft. He gripped her shoulder and found his fingers sank into the marble, deformed it like skin. Gray skin, pallid skin, and webbed with dark veins, nearly black. He rose to sit, tried to lift her, and found she bent backwards as though she had a spine, as though she were flesh. Dead flesh. Jacques recoiled, swore. What was this? He wondered. Was this the drink? Had his mind finally broken? That was when he noticed himself sinking into his bed, his sheets, bunched in his tightly closed fist, had themselves grown soft and veiny, and covered in irregular tufts of hair. And the bed, a large slab of fibrous meat, heaved under his weight. His other hand sunk into it, and something cracked. He pierced the surface, exposing a shattered, brittle bone and a gush of foul blood. Jacques screamed. The bed heaved under him as he leapt to the floor, and the parquet beneath his feet turned almost at once into a meshwork of impossible fingers, too long and too short, with too many joints, fused at all angles, all writhing and snapping and cracking under his panicked retreat. Every tool he touched turned into a shivering mass of malformed bone and sinew, screaming of wrongness, and every wall he stumbled into blossomed into a rippling bruise, a labyrinthine organ, a tortured thing filled with fluids. The air in his studio grew hot and moist, and blood and other things dribbled from 1,000 open sores. His shrieking unending, he charged for his door and the stairway beyond. But no sooner had he placed his hands on the heavy wood than it cracked into a wheel of ribs, hiding a colossal, misshapen heart of dozens of chambers, each beating a deafening drum and spurting gore everywhere. Jacques turned and fled for his balcony. Too late. The balcony itself became a broad, lolling tongue which rolled back and kept him inside, and thousands of jagged, splintered teeth erupted from both the ceiling and the floor. The whole tower shuddered, ground against itself, writhed in fury and meaningless pain, and collapsed under its own weight. It pitched forward and splattered into the Saône with a finality that said, "No more collision." Dices drove west, obeying the speed limit, and he trembled as he tried to light his 7th cigarette of the morning. His lips tingled around the filter. He smelled his own stale breath, captured in the palm he cupped around the lighter's weak flame. He swallowed against the sticky thudding of the pulse that beat too high in his throat. The cigarette caught the flame and smoldered. Dices cracked his window, and the smoke that drifted up to burn his eyes was sucked away into the cold morning. He coasted under yet another green light. He'd encountered only green lights, insistent go, go, go signals from the universe. Heavy slugs crept in his bowels. He sucked greedily at his cigarette, crossing his eyes to watch the ember glow. Flecks of ash dusted his lap. Another green light. Dices flicked a quick gaze to the dashboard clock, cursing his good luck, slowing down, willing the minutes to move. He was running early for his appointment, so many factors having contributed to the unwelcome streamlining of his journey. He still hadn't gotten used to the lack of traffic on the Rue. Everyone took the new Magway now. The perimeter gates of his settle block had been open already, and he hadn't needed to wait for security to buzz him through. The sobriety checkpoint had been unmanned. His trip had taken 10 minutes, fewer than he'd planned. Another green light. The car's rusted axle scraped a deep pothole in the middle of the intersection. Dices thought about pulling over to kill time, but he knew if he stopped the car, he would not be able to start it again. He inhaled a huge, head-spinning drag of smoke and opened the window a bit more. His hand shook as he poked the tip of the cigarette out the window to tap its growing column of ash onto the street. A nervous tremor rippled through him, and the stick fell from his nicotine-stained fingers. He fumbled instinctively, knocking his knuckles against the glass, and the drafting air pressure caught the cigarette and blew it back at him. He didn't see where it landed. The car was full of kindling, fast food wrappers, flammable with grease, sun-brittled paper, dirty clothes. He imagined the back seat catching fire and tried to reach behind him, patting, feeling for the errant ember, grimacing at the green light visible above the next empty intersection. Dices felt a huge, hot bug bite his left elbow and reacted by slamming his foot against the gas pedal. He yelped and smacked the sleeve his cigarette had fallen into. It burned as he ground it into his skin. The car veered. He shook his sleeve out, flinging the still smoldering cigarette out of his cuff, and made to stamp it out on the floor mat, wincing and checking the time, and still accelerating under the last green light. And when the flustered panic retreated beneath his original anxiety, he finally looked back at the road, just in time to watch a man disappear under the front of his car. He braked, far too late, long after being gently jostled by two soft thumps below him. Dices never got to find out if he possessed enough cowardice to pull off a hit and run. The pitchy squeal of badly maintained brakes and the crash of chassis on curb alerted supplicants of the Tor Vahgar. They streamed out of their temple to investigate, their white ceremonial robes billowing in the morning wind. Dices sat still, his hands locked in grip around the wheel, as if he meant to strangle it. He wished he could let go and light a cigarette, but that would mean He'd next have to open the door, step into the morning, and face the red, squeezed tube of a body on the road behind him. Would it be wet, steaming in the frigid air? Was his car heavy enough to squelch organs from orifice? Or would he find less messy, blunt force trauma? He pictured dirty tire tracks on a crushed throat. Might the man still be alive? It was that thought that loosened his grip and allowed him to move, sludgy slow, on shock cocooning autopilot. He reached for his cigarettes and felt a flood of relief when he found that 2 smokes remained in the worry-crumpled package. His hands were steady when he lit one. He got out of the car and watched the white robes flock to the stillness in the street. A woman stood over the body and cried, while another tapped off a message on her handheld. A man knelt, the pristine hem of his robe drawing road dust up through fabric capillaries. He reached for the body with tentative, gentle fingers. They all saw the gun at the same time. It had been knocked several feet from the dead man. A scratched-up, bootleg particle cannon. Tech from an old empire, illegal and devastating, primed, and still pointing at the temple of Tor Vagar. Dices thought ridiculously of that old game. Spin the bottle. He sat on the curb and smoked, not wanting to bother the Vagarans with his stink, not wanting to yellow their robes with his residue. Sirens wailed, melancholy and distant, approaching via the magway. The crying woman ran back toward the temple, calling a name in an alien language as she flitted inside. Barana! Realization of their narrowly escaped victimhood widened the eyes of the Vagarans on the street. Shock ran through them like a contagion, vulnerability dawning like a weak sunrise. They stepped away from the body, their eyes on the gun, as if it might come to life and shoot them on its own. More Vagarans exited the temple, joining the congregation that formed in the road, keeping a safe distance from the downed would-be gunmen. They discussed in hushed voices, asked shrill questions of each other, and gradually their attentions diverted to the silent, smoking man sitting on the curb by his ruined car. The man with the dirty hem approached Dices and crouched. "Sir," the Vagaran said. "Sir, are you all right? Are you injured?" Dices blew smoke away from the man's intent, searching face. "Don't think so. Don't think you're all right. Or don't think you're injured." Dices blinked. "Both, I guess." He wanted to laugh. He'd killed a man. He would not be making his appointment. "He saved us!" A woman rushed over, the one with her hand held out, the one who'd presumably summoned the emergency vehicles that were now speeding down the Magway's off-ramp onto the Rue. Blue and red lights spun halos in the morning fog around them. Sirens muffled the increasingly frantic voices of the Vagarans as their attentions closed in on Dices. He stubbed his cigarette out on the concrete and pocketed the butt. He didn't want to litter in front of these pristine, holy people. Saviors have to keep up appearances, he thought. Admiration was foreign to Dices, and at first he mistook it for suspicion. When the responding officers were finally able to pry him away from the Vahagaran, the media, and the tangle of emergency vehicles, they took him to the police station and parked him in an interrogation room. They gave him a cup of hot chocolate. They shook his hand. Short, neatly groomed Officer Kayata led him outside to smoke when he requested it, though she wrinkled her nose while she waited for him to finish. He caught a glint at her throat, noticing the stylized Tor Va Garan saucer pendant she wore on a delicate chain, an icon of worship, veneration of the alien hands that cradled Earth, mending it from its human-inflicted wounds. "You should really stop that," she said, squinting her eyes against the smoke as he exhaled. "It stinks. They're my lungs, and I'll ruin them if I want to," he thought. He narrowed his eyes at her pendant. "Not that you'd understand." Officer Kayata took a call on her handheld, walking a few yards away as Dices blew smoke into the still cold early afternoon sky. "This is about to get a lot bigger," she warned him as she strode back to him, her call concluded. A Tor Vahgar ambassador was supposed to be at that temple today. She maintained her professional demeanor, but Dices didn't miss the sparkling hint of tears at the corners of her eyes. Back in the interrogation room, Dices sat on his hands to both hide their trembling and warm them up. Officer Kayata brought him another hot chocolate and sat primly in the metal chair across the table from Dices. Fluorescent lights clicked above, probing and harshly bright, the better to scrutinize you with. "This is just a formality." Officer Boskov, gruff and bushily mustached, shuffled incident reports and witness statements on the metal table. "You're not in any trouble. We just want to get our facts straight. As you can imagine, the entire Vahgaran community stands behind you. You told him about the ambassador?" Officer Kayata nodded. "They've offered their best lawyers, but I don't think you'll need them. They've also set up a donation hotline." Dices clenched his stomach against the tide of bile that threatened to rise. He wanted a cigarette, but his pack was empty. He felt the deprived addict's headache peeking around the corner, waiting to ambush. Officer Boskov's voice took on a serious tone, and he asked the question Dices had been dreading. "Where were you headed when you saw the gunman?" Dices swallowed, pausing for a moment too long. "Going to the doctor. My lungs," he said, freeing a hand unconsciously to reach for the empty pack of cigarettes in his pocket. He thumped a tightly closed fist on his chest. He thought a cough might be too much, too performative. "Will your doctor verify that?" Boskov clicked a pen, made a note. "I was hoping they'd see me as a walk-in. I was coughing up blood last night." "I see," Boskov said. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his mustache as he regarded Dices. Now, I know this might be hard to talk about, and you're probably still in a bit of shock, but I need you to describe what happened again, with all the detail you can remember. Start with when you first saw the man on the street. What caught your attention? And what made you act? Again, he said, his eyebrows raised with kind concern. You aren't in trouble. Fact is, you're a hero whether you see yourself as one or not yet. You prevented what could have been an absolute massacre. That gun was modded and energized to gar and back. You saved a lot of lives. But we need to get everything on record. Officer Kayata twisted the Tor Va Gar pendant she wore, her expression thoughtful, thankful. Dices tried to keep from hyperventilating. He cleared his throat. He spun his tail. He'd seen a furtive, suspicious man crossing the street, with Hunter's eyes narrowed and predatory. A gun, hefted and steady, striding with obvious, murderous intent toward the temple. Dices told the officers how he'd accelerated without hesitation, careening for the terrorist, without fear for his own life, steering to kill and damn the consequences. It was the right thing to do. He had been out of his body. Righteous instinct taking over. And all he'd felt was relief when the man's rampage was aborted under his balding tires. He'd almost convinced himself the story was true, until he found himself absent-mindedly scratching the blister on his left elbow. Vivette, the Va Garan PR representative, was a harried woman with 2 briefcases and a shaved head. She wore glasses and chewed gum like it fueled her, and her frantic productivity agitated and exhausted Dices. He tried to pay attention to the several trains of thought she conducted. Tor Barana will want to join you for some press conferences, she said, typing a proposed media circuit schedule on a shiny laptop. She checked the official Vagaran forums. 4 independent congregations set up charity pools to cover any legal expenses. Gifts are coming in from all over the place. Is there any weird stuff about you online that I should know about? I don't think so, Dices said. He sipped tepid coffee and forced himself to take a bite of his rubbery omelet. Vivette had wanted to meet him at his home, to make you feel more comfortable and for privacy, she'd said. But he suspected she'd really wanted to scope out his situation and avert any potential PR crises before publicly canonizing him into the Vagaran sainthood. He'd refused, citing embarrassment about his messy bachelor's apartment. She'd looked at him suspiciously, but had caved and met him at a cafe downtown. Time was of the essence for a story like this, she said. Already his face was plastered across screens and papers, his full name emblazoned in impact font under epithets like the hero of New Hartford and a savior's savior. Vivette checked a text message on her handheld. An email on her laptop. A notification on her watch. Information about Dices assaulted her while he watched, tapping a nicotine withdrawal beat on the table with his fingertips. Oh, look, the Mississippi branch got you a new car. She turned the laptop around and showed Dices a photo of grateful, white-robed zealots smiling next to a state-of-the-art mag car. Dices sneered. He hated those identity-stripped husks of bland futurism. You don't like it? She asked, catching his expression before looking down to respond to another text message. If I'd had one of those today, I wouldn't have been there to run down Corsican. Trent Corsican. The other face of the day. The lone terrorist with a grudge against the benevolent aliens and their worshippers. A regressivist with a raided apartment full of heretical literature and MacGyvered weapons. Dices couldn't picture the man's face as having belonged to the body he'd smeared on the road. The visage and the corpse felt like two different men. Dices felt like two men as well. The one who'd been anxious about an appointment earlier, and the paragon of righteous bravery he'd become. He needed to get home. He had to clean his apartment. It is a bit ironic, isn't it? The Tor Vagar give us MagTech, and then you go and save them with that pollution machine relic. Oh, your Reward a Hero fund is up to 17 million credits, Vivette said with an uncharacteristic awe. Wow, I'll say. She narrowed her eyes. How do you feel about joining a Vahgaran chapter? It's a great organization, and it would look great. Dices clenched his teeth. I guess I could do that, he said, thinking of 17 million credits. He felt a piece of his principles snap off inside him. Great. A conversion might seem pandering if we do it too soon. She checked her calendar for a good baptism date. Okay. He really needed to get home to clean, and you're going to need to stop smoking. Vivette gave him a disappointed mother's face. It's terrible optics, and it smells awful, and it's bad for me. I know, Dices thought, and he'd never wanted a cigarette more. He pictured himself smoking in his new mag car. The two versions of himself collided. The rebel and the hypocrite. Is there anything so sacred as a being's right to self-destruct? Dices wondered as he finally lit a cigarette. The smoke collected in the dark room. His comforting blanket of reckless autonomy. Dices had waited for the mag cab to pull away before unlocking the door of his apartment. He'd wondered how many more times he'd go through that familiar motion. He was now the owner of 60 million credits and could already taste the fresh air of a new settle block. A skyscraping penthouse with windows that opened to let in the cleanest clouds. It was dark, the grimy settle block quiet, secured for the night against the scavenger sects. Dices had slipped inside the apartment, already feeling estranged from it, a trespasser, and he'd locked the door behind him quickly. He'd gone straight for his stash of smokes, navigating the clutter without needing to turn on a light. He sat now on a ratty couch full of cigarette burns. He touched the circle on his elbow. "We match," he said out loud, and laughed. He thought of the new couch he'd buy. Something soft, pillowy, something not pulled from a dumpster, something he might try to fall asleep on without a lit cigarette between his fingers. Maybe it would be nice to live in the world the Tor Vagar race was trying to build. Dices exhaled, and he couldn't see the smoke in the darkness. He never felt the drags as effectively when he couldn't see the evidence of them. He saw emissions as proof of life. Was a sterile world a lived-in world? He'd believed destruction was inevitable, and more insidious if hidden. He coughed. It was too dark to see any blood. Maybe it was good he'd missed his appointment. He imagined his beautiful, freshly painted penthouse again. Then he thought of its opposite. A run-down safe house in a derelict settle block across town, sitting empty. He hadn't had a chance to give the house's rusted key to Corsican. It was still nestled in his pocket, alongside a pamphlet containing encrypted contact numbers, meeting coordinates, and credit stash codes. He'd lusted after the assassination bounty before, but now it seemed pathetic. An insult, hardly enough to rise from ashes with. A getaway driver was supposed to provide a new life, but not for themselves. He wondered if the Tor Vagar ever felt that way, rerouting a civilization from its path of shit, finding themselves gods when they finished. "Sorry, brother in cause." Dices raised a fresh cigarette in salute. To new lives. He lit the cigarette, wondering if it would be his last, and used the same flame to burn the regressivist pamphlet. Do flamethrowers belong in the library? We lose people all the time. It's just the nature of the job. What can you expect from a place full of nooks and crannies? People intentionally go to get lost in. I usually don't worry when I don't see someone for a while. But when it's been days since someone's checked out, it's usually a sign that I need to step in. I'm not doing this alone, thankfully. No librarian is ever truly alone, are they? I have help from the watchers and listeners of the shelves. Thanks to them, it usually doesn't take long to get the scent, if you know what I mean. However, today is one of the rare and unfortunate exceptions when my search has exceeded more than an hour, and an hour is pushing it. I've been searching and asking around for almost 6 hours, scouring shelves and listening for the telltale breathing. The watchers have their quadrants, so it's much like playing hot and cold. Bad news, one says, and my brain shivers in my skull, both from its existence and its statement. They crossed the tape, says the watcher, and I groan. Are you sure? My stomach still drops at the thought, even though I've been doing this a very long time. Long enough that I remember every book on every shelf better than my own child's face. But knowing a poor soul lost themselves beyond the tape, I grieve for them. The watcher doesn't speak, but generates an affirmative sensation. That means I have to backtrack to my desk for supplies. I thank them, asking that they send word ahead of my arrival. It's been a while since I've had to go past the tape, which means it's been a while since I entered the broom closet. The helmet is dusty. It looks almost like it's from one of those old-fashioned scuba diving suits. It's not nearly so heavy, though. There's a bright lamp affixed to the front just above the visor, but it's as much of a hindrance as a help. While most of the time, those beyond the tape know not to bother me, some still get bored enough to try. And the lamp acts like a beacon. I don't blame them. It's what prisoners do. Find the weakest among them and test their mettle. I've got a sack full of unperishables, tinctures, aspirin, and a compass. Not like the kind you're used to, but would take too long to explain. And time is of the essence, so I'll let your imagination handle it from here. I sling the sack across my body and fasten my waist with a utility belt that would make a trust fund bat character with abandonment issues jealous. It's got floss, lighters, matches, and a few more tools that don't exist outside of the library. The last thing I grab is the flamethrower. This is where I should be very transparent with you. I'm not actually the librarian. I'm the librarian's assistant. I know, isn't that just your luck, right? Not to worry. I'm very good at using this thing, and it does the job nicely. Whatever job I may deem necessary at any particular moment. But the head librarian doesn't really need much of anything to ward off what lingers here. I don't know exactly where he is at the moment, nor do I want to know. If this were a real pickle, I would summon him. But while a rare occasion, it's not unusual in the scope of 1,000 years. After all, no one comes here without the intention, whether it's conscious or subconscious, to get lost. It's the nature of this place. But you know that, don't you? It's why you're here, after all. It doesn't take me long to find the tape, which is fortuitous. Sometimes it moves around, but the watchers and listeners kept a beat on it this time, so as to direct me. Yes, it is really dark. Yes, it's literal tape. Hazard tape. But that's almost like a beacon to the adventurous, isn't it? I think the library knows that. It's greedy, but it's also quite discerning in taste. In some circles, that means that I should extend congratulations to you. In others, I offer my sincerest sympathy. I hear my name and ignore it as I crawl through the crisscross of reflective strips. The tape moves not at random, by the way. It genuinely serves as a warning, whether it's gatekeeping sections currently under construction, in repair, or missing. I try not to, but I think that last one has something to do with where the head librarian went. Don't worry about it. My name is not important, so ineffectual that I've forgotten. I hear my name again as I begrudgingly turn on the lamp. Not a lot of help, just enough light to ensure I don't trip over anything or disturb the shelves. Many sleep here. I send off a warning shot from the flamethrower, showing I carry more light than just atop my appetizing head. The flash of flames sends things slithering. But most of those this close to the tape have never been very convicted by nature, so I'm not concerned. There are more listeners and less watchers past the tape, for obvious reasons. Thankfully, they say I don't have to go too far. I look down at the telling clicking sound to see rocks rolling. Some as big as my foot, and some as small as the tip of my thumb. The smaller ones move more easily, but all are rolling as if pulled toward a central point. I don't even need the compass, but I glance down at it one more time before stuffing it back into the sack. While I don't have to go too far, things are relative here. 10 steps may be 10,000. And so, even after only a few moments of exploring, I feel acute pressure jamming into my temples. My heart feels like it's being squeezed, and my vision blurs. My fingers tingle by the time I'm able to shake the aspirin into my mouth. I chew it, ignoring the sound of my name, my true name, the one only I can hear. You'll hear your own as well, if you stay here long enough. My vision clears, which just means the dark looks sharper. And I sweep another warning arc from the flamethrower for good measure. I do this as much because I love the sound as for protection. I also appreciate the warmth. It gets cold here, but in a strange way, which shouldn't surprise you at this point. It's cold, like how the first signs of spring show in the early morning dew that's only just melted. I can smell and taste the sweat on my upper lip. And it's cold, and then I hear it. A few or 1,000 steps later, the breathing sound I've been listening for. The pace of the rocks quickens, and my head is turned down, so the helmet light prevents me from tripping over or impeding their journey. A famous author once said, "All things serve the beam." And that's as true in this world as it is in the others. Except this beam, this beacon, is attached to our lost visitor. I can only hear the rocks, mumblings, and the breathing sound now. The smell is so musty and thick, like the air is full of sweat and dust, like I've stuck my head out the window during a heavily falling rain. If I think hard enough about it, soon I'll be drenched, so I don't. While the rocks are almost the perfect tell, and the listeners too corroborates the evidence, you can never be too sure. Only light can be sure. I take a match from the tiny box snap it to life, and then blow it out. Tiny smoke tendrils curl and waft until they also follow the same flow as the rocks. Excellent. We've not been led astray. A few or 1,000 more steps, and the rocks are gathering down an aisle where the breathing is more like wheezing, like the desperate struggle to take in. Lo and behold, we found them. Poor thing. Judging by the state of her, she got lost early. She's likely been here for most of the day. The book covers her face, consuming her head like a kid on a particularly large popsicle. The pages flutter gently against her too white jaw. The papery quality of her skin and the wanting muscle mass show how little time was on our side. Not a moment to waste. I grab the book by the edges of both back and front covers. It's got most of her head inside at this point. Just her earlobes, hair, and edge of her jaw peek out from beneath the pages I now grip firmly. The wheezing turns into a moan that turns into a sob. Now, I say, and test the hold the book has on its victim. It's snug, too snug to yank like a leech. I need to treat it like a tick, making sure to get the head out. None of these are intended as puns, but it just happens after being surrounded by books and prose for so long. I draw one of the tiny vials strapped in my utility belt and pull the cork out. It smells like nothing to me, but I see the reaction immediately. Our half-consumed explorer moves a bit, her fingers mostly, and I hear a second, tinier moan beneath that of the books. I pour a small amount of the substance into the palm of my hand, and I smooth it gently down the spine of the book. It wails again, and so does the girl, both full of sorrow and reluctance. I feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, so I turn at the hip, cock the flamethrower, and send off a very intentionally long tail of flames. When the feeling subsides, I shrug the weapon back over my shoulder. I use the backs of 2 knuckles to knock gently on the book cover. It's time to come back now. My apologies, I say, and I mean it. The book and the girl moan again, more hollowly, and I can feel the seal, the bond, splitting like a seam. I grip the book again, because these two are stubborn and have to pry them apart. The color and mass return beneath her skin, and though her eyes are open, they can't see anything. She'll be like that for a while. It's normal. She'll recover. I pour the remaining contents of the bottle down the part of her frazzled blonde hair. Tears fill the empty eyes and drip down her face. Her mouth presses into a thin white line and grimaces so intensely that the flesh folds in multiple layers at the corners of her mouth. Great pain. Even after 1,000 years, I still can't help but feel sorry. So I pull her burning head under my chin and rub circles into her back. I'm sorry, dear. I know you've been told otherwise, but this place is a prison, and that isn't your story. Yours is still being written, and the one which made you pretty promises is lying and jealous. One day, you, if the world is cruel, may yet have a place here. But it's not today. So let's go have a cup of tea. I tell her, as I've told many like her. I've gotten better at it over the years. I used to have to fight with them. Often, I'd give up and just keep them safe until the head librarian got back to talk them down. She finally lets out a weak, wheezing breath. I take advantage of the broken seam of her lips and pour a tincture down her throat. I don't even have to look anymore. I can just feel the specific melodies that make each tincture different. It helps that the one I need usually sings a bit louder as a courtesy, and it'll purr like a cat when I've touched my fingers to it. She chokes a bit, but her eyes start to clear. Good enough for now. The back of my neck has another sudden influx of goosebumps. We've overstayed our welcome. It's time to go. I put the book back on the shelf. I don't scold it, just allow its ache and frustration flow through me. I apologize, but there's no comfort I can give. My words and compassion are meaningless. I've noted the volume and will tell the head librarian. They might be able to soothe it back to sleep. I tap the metal bauble around my neck, and we're back at my desk. I drape the girl onto a nearby love seat that's seen better days, starting the kettle before heading to the broom closet to stash the emergency kit. She'll be fine. People like her, and you, always are. This place was made to help the wanderers and recklessly imaginative. Those who can't wrap their heads around the world the way it is, and can see the truth of magic between heartbeats and heartbreaks. And people like me and the head librarian, when they so choose to grace us with their presence, keep the place orderly and open for you. And we're here to help guide you back on track if you lose inspiration for your own story. It's the nature of the job, the library itself. What else can you expect from a place full of nooks and crannies that people choose to get lost in? Bedtime for Muriel. Cocoa, warm, not scalding, with pink marshmallows. And use a mug this time. I don't need to lose any more porcelain by knocking it off the table in the middle of the night. Use your brain, for fuck's sake. Yes, Muriel, said Angela, nodding as she tucked the hummingbird motif duvet around the octogenarian's neck. I'll be right back. You just get comfy and listen to Barry. Listen to Barry, the old woman with the silver hair scoffed, shuffling under the covers as if in criticism of the way she'd been positioned. Why do I have to listen to Barry? He's a wanker. Why do you always play him? Because you love Barry Manilow, Angela replied, making sure the personal alarm on Muriel McCandless's bedside table was in reach. And he's the only one who gets you to sleep. Don't tell me I'm wrong. We've experimented with Neil and Lionel, but you always end up awake all night. We're not doing that again. Barry fucking Manilow," said Muriel, flopping her arms against the mattress like a petulant child. "Sounds like a cat being strangled. Absolute wanker." Angela couldn't suppress a giggle as she made her way across to the door, pausing to retrieve the tray laden with pill bottles and blister packs of various medications from the dresser beside it. "And why is that horrible painting still on my wall? I told you, I don't like it. It gives me nightmares. For fuck's sake, put it in the bin." "I did put it in the bin," Angela said, pausing by the threshold to straighten said picture with her free hand. 10 times. "And you always tell me to put it back because it's your anchor, whatever that means. It's a fine painting anyway, one of your best. I have no idea what it is, but those slabs of overlapping color really do jump off the canvas. It's horrendous. I was stoned when I did it, like all the rest, and the idiot sheep lap them up. Pretentious twats with more money than sense, putting value on my neuroses." "So true," Angela nodded, leaving the room. "But at least they made you a fortune. Now, don't nod off before I come back with your cocoa." She said the same thing every night, winking at the lady of the house, whose head propped up on 2 Hungarian goose-down pillows was glaring daggers. "I might have to drink it myself." "Don't you dare touch my butler's chocolate, young lady," Muriel called as she pulled the door shut. "It's Cadbury's we get for you, and you better fucking drink it." With the thick slab of mahogany secured in the doorframe, Muriel's shrill voice faded, and Angela's giggle turned to a chuckle as she made her way downstairs. Miserable Muriel. Moaning Muriel. Malicious Muriel, but also her Muriel, and despite her contrariness, she loved her. Nobody could put up with her for long. Not her husband, who she said passed away to escape her. Not her kids, who she said found careers in faraway countries to avoid having to visit. Which was good for Angela, who was used to dealing with foul-mouthed, cantankerous old biddies, having looked after her mother for years. It meant she got the gig of a lifetime as a live-in nurse and maid to a world-renowned, reclusive, abstract artist, free food and board, the run of a manor on private land in Wexford, surrounded by nature. What more could a 30-year-old carer of the elderly, sick of working endless shifts in soulless hospitals, and keen to fulfill her ambition of providing one-on-one personal caregiving, ask for, other than a cup of Butler's chocolate before bed? Reaching the bottom of the stairs and turning towards the kitchen, she fished her phone from her pocket to check the notification she'd felt buzz in some minutes before. WhatsApp from Freddie. "I'm here. Is the cranky old bitch asleep yet?" Shaking her head, Angela used her thumb to type. Not a bitch. Eccentric. And no, not yet. Making her chocolate. Out soon. Hope the pizza's ordered. Phone back in pocket. She made her way down a hall lined with photos featuring everything but family, friends, and Muriel's art, because she had no friends, hated her family, and her art terrified her. Shouldering her way through another thick door into the kitchen, the back door stood open, and it was freezing. The chill October temperatures having made themselves at home. "What the hell?" said Angela, placing the tray on the marble-topped kitchen island. "Freddie, I told you. You can't come into the main house. You'll get me fired." She couldn't see Freddie, but she knew she was there because the door had definitely been shut, and she was the only other person with access to the property. Something Muriel had reluctantly agreed to, on the proviso that her boyfriend only came over between 9 and 10 on weekends. Rules, of course, were made to be broken, and it was now 9:30 on Wednesday, with a night of pizza, beer, and Love Island catch-ups to look forward to. And were you raised in a barn? God, Freddie, close the door at least. As she hurried to shut out the cold, she caught a glimpse of movement by the fireplace and tensed herself, waiting for Frederica to wrap her arms around her and lift her off the floor, spin her around, and kiss her. She giggled in anticipation. "Just be quiet, okay? Her music's on, but I swear she has a sixth sense. She always seems to know when." Raquel. The odd-sounding words were guttural, rasping, nails on chalkboard jarring, and Angela felt her blood run cold as the door clicked into place, and she smelt something rotten. Freddie? She knew it wasn't Freddie, but she turned anyway, to stare in horror at the bulbous, slug-skinned thing lurching towards her. A dozen yellow eyes in a mantis-like head, blood dribbling from fleshy mandibles as it swung one of many barb-covered tentacles at her head, slamming her hard to the floor. "Muriel, because you like Barry Manilow. Sarcastic bitch. I do in my shite." Muriel had thrown off her duvet and swung her spindly legs off the mattress, slipped her bony feet into fluffy slippers, and wobbled to the dresser, where her phone was plugged in to charge, and from which the odious lyrics of Copacabana were oozing. "Awful," Muriel spat, snatching up the phone to swipe at its screen with a withered finger. "Fucking awful. How do I get George on this thing?" Her efforts to navigate the Spotify home screen were interrupted when her eyes went to the canvas over the dresser, causing her to shiver and moan. "Awful," she said again, dropping the phone as Barry sang. "She lost her youth, and she lost her Tony. Now she's lost her mind. Told her to put it in the bin. Stupid bitch never listens. I've a mind to send her packing. Her and that long-haired boyfriend of hers. Dresses like a girl. Whatever happened to..." She'd tugged the painting off the wall, shuffled to the door, pulled it open, and was about to fling the canvas out when she heard something stumble on the stairs. but only after being staggered by the smell of rotten fruit or vegetables, a smell that activated in her head a buried memory, like the image on the canvas which suddenly flared to life in her mind's eye. She was led by the hand from the tent in the forest to the light in the night, by a shadow, looking back for help, seeing her father in his bag by the campfire, shouting, "Daddy, we're not alone." To no response, shivering in her nightdress, pine needles stabbing her bare feet. When she looked forward again, in response to the shadow telling her its name, she was entering the light and finding it filled with an indescribable array of frightening objects, machines and devices, glowing in bright colors. A chair, which she was placed into, to be pushed towards a hulking monster that reached dozens of wriggling tentacles towards her, making her scream. Arnold?" She surprised herself by muttering, as her knees gave out and she collapsed, landing with her head outside her door, turned towards the source of the smell, towards the glistening black thing that was lurching up the stairs on lumpy legs, like a bipedal squid out of water, black as tar, drooling blood, tentacles whipping in the air. "Arnold," she said again, though she didn't know why, just that the name had entered her head when she recognized the odor, an odor she'd smelled only once in her life and forgotten, an odor she remembered now as memories of that night in June 41 exploded in her mind like Luftwaffe bombs. The night she wandered off during a camping trip with her family and got lost in the woods for 3 days. Unknown colors, unidentifiable shapes, morphing, mutating, surging around her like waves, and amongst them, yellow eyes, drooling pincers, tentacles in her mouth, wriggling deep, filling her throat. "Are you Arnold?" Muriel asked, pushing herself up to kneeling, watching the monster approach. "Did you take me away?" The terrifying beast of many tentacles reached the top of the stairs, brought its insectile head level with hers, narrowed its sulfur yellow eyes. Words that sounded like "Crachet," "Verakel" came from its blood-smeared mandibles, and Muriel straightened in defiance, remembering the sounds, remembering the smell, remembering it. "Did you take me?" she demanded, as a long-sought understanding of why she hurt the way she hurt, and dreamt the things she dreamt, and channeled the visions she was plagued with finally materialized. "You filthy, alien pervert!" The creature drew itself up to full height, spread its pincers wide, and issued an ear-splitting shriek that sprayed droplets of blood on Muriel's face. "You stole my life!" The fiery 87-year-old spat, struggling to her feet as the monster hissed. "You filled me with hate and anger. Tusak Verakel," it said, stepping closer, swinging its tentacles back to Mu'il. It was Angela, appearing on the monster's back, wrapping her arms around its neck, her face a mask of horror, bloody and torn, flap of skin dangling from one cheek, lips burst, eyes swollen, glaring. "One," she forced past mangled tongue. "Call Rice." The alien monster thing shrieked and thrashed and slammed itself into the wall, reaching up and back, coiling tentacles around Angela's head. Muriel, snapped from the fugue-like state she'd drifted into by Angela's appearance, felt delayed panic race through her and turned, tottered back into her room, swung the door shut, and reached for her phone, still connected to its charging cable on the dresser. "I've been alive forever," Barry crooned, "and I wrote the very first song." For the second time in as many minutes, the old lady's trembling hands gathered up the phone, then dropped it again as the door burst open. An airborne, headless Angela flying through, slamming into Muriel, and knocking them both to the floor. "Stupid bitch," she thought, propping herself up on her elbows, feeling a heavy weight on her legs, knowing without looking it was Angela. Fat lot of good she was. Should have got rid of her ages ago. Probably let that bastard get in while she was canoodling with... Wait, Arnold? Was that really Arnold? I remember him taking my hand while I peed. Before she could finish the thought, the window over her bed exploded, and millions of shards of razor-sharp glass filled the room, lacerating her arms, legs, and face. Arnold. When the alert came through, he was 18 parsecs away on Vestron 7, helping to quell an uprising organized by the anarchic Micropian Party in advance of upcoming elections, and he cursed himself for falling for the ploy, although he'd been transferred to the president's personal security division. The rebel leader, Pleekvar, knew he wouldn't be able to resist returning to his homeworld to help the ground troops subdue the dissidents. He had knowledge of the land that would prove invaluable to their efforts, so it wasn't a stretch to predict what he would do when he heard of the unrest. Anti-libertarian, Micropian scum tarnishing his beautiful Vestropolis? Unthinkable. Arnold Edibold couldn't stand by while such a violation occurred, and he hadn't. But by abandoning his post to rejoin his regiment, he'd left his asset unguarded and given Pleekvar an opportunity to damage Turanian unity. He would be banished to the frozen wastes for such an indiscretion. So as soon as he received news of the security breach from the capital, he knew what machinations were afoot and commandeered a starhopper to take him from Vestron to Earth. A trip through the inner cosmos that normally took several hours, but he accomplished in one as he raced to avert disaster, a feat he was sure he had failed when he teleported down to the grounds of the manor and discovered the remains of a human female scattered across the lawn. "I'm too late," was his first thought. "We will lose the elections. The anarchists will seize power. The Turanian nation will fall, and I will live out my days on an ice-cold rock near Cetron, were his second, third, fourth, and fifth. Then he heard sounds of commotion from a room on the second floor and realized he still had a chance. He raced to the wall, used his tentacles to climb it, eyes narrowing into slits as he prepared for battle, reaching the window and smashing through into the sleeping quarters of the one he'd sworn to protect. Muriel McCandless, now much older than she'd been when he left his post 2 days before. 14 years older, to be precise. She was on the floor, under a corpse, covering her head with twig-like arms as glass rained down around her. Arnold landed on a pink platform under the window as the assassin pounced into the room, placed a foot on the small of Muriel's back, snaked its tentacles down towards her head. It glared at him while it coiled its limbs around her neck. "Cratchit, Verakel," it snarled, and Arnold looked on in defeat, knowing he couldn't do anything before the rebel ripped the head off the human. They'd hacked the Capitol's data files. They'd found who they were looking for. They'd determined her location and knew they had time to take her out. They'd put a plan in motion, and it had worked. They were seconds away from causing an election upset. Unless the president would not be happy. But there was only one thing he could do. "Daddy." "We're not alone," he said, in perfect English, mimicking the voice of the 5-year-old girl in the woods. The only thing she'd said beyond screaming when he took her from her family 2 weeks before. The words they'd recorded and used, buried in her subconscious as a trigger to put her mind in a coma when needed. Beneath the rebel's foot, Muriel's body contorted, spine snapping, head twisting, neck breaking, eyes staring up at Arnold. Fuck you, Arnold," she said. "You evil best." Her final word trailed off as her head exploded, and from the hole in her neck came Vera Kell, howling as she grew from shrunken embryo to full-size adult in a matter of moments. The rebel fell back, tentacles around the emerging president, becoming entangled with hers as they grew from her torso. It was trapped, and it hissed, and it roared. Watching Vera Kell's head fully form, her eyes blink open and stare. It took her a second to get her bearings, but once she had, she didn't wait. Opening a second vertical mouth in her throat and spraying a jet of corrosive acid from her guts. An act only females of the Turanian race could perform. An act Arnold could not watch. He stared at his feet while the anarchist screamed, at the unstable, pink slab he was standing on, and the earth bird illustrated puffy material, balled up at its end. Pretty, he thought. Looks soft. Inviting. Why don't we have such niceties on Arnold, the president said, snapping him to attention and bringing his gaze back up, avoiding the steaming mass of goo by the door. Yes, ma'am? What transpired today? Why the intrusion? Anarchists, ma'am. Pleekvar hacked the capital's databanks, found out you were vacationing on Earth in a human host with me watching over, saw it as a chance to take you out of the running for re-election, initiated an uprising on Vestron through 7 to lure me away. Sadly, I fell for it, thought they could use a local to help. Then he sent someone to eliminate you. I see. But you found out? Capital agents got wind of it and alerted me. I returned at once, but too late to do anything other than wake you. I apologize, ma'am. Vera Kell grunted, looking around the room. Fuck, she said, in her characteristic crude way. Ma'am, couldn't even get 2 shitting weeks to myself before starting on the campaign trail. This was a good life, too. Fun. But interrupted right before the end. What bullshit. Human passings are the best fucking bits. Sorry, ma'am. Don't apologize. I'm alive, aren't I? Thanks to you. Did you say that asshole Pleekvar orchestrated a rebellion on your homeworld? Yes, ma'am. Is it quelled? No, ma'am. I had to leave before... Then what are we fucking waiting for? You have a hopper, I presume? Let's get back to it. I'm in the mood for melting more anarchists. And then I'm going to kick the living shit out of Pleekvar. And so, exiting a crime scene the likes of which had never before been witnessed, Vera Kell and Arnold left Manilow behind, singing, "We'll just go on burning bright somewhere in the night." Black Book. What is the value of a human life? Henry often wondered this himself. Sometimes it was all he thought about. A person is born, goes to school, gets into a career, and maybe even settles down and has a family. So many factors go into someone's life that it is hard to quantify each variable. Yet Henry constantly tried to answer the question, and that's why you need to sort the shelves the way the company trained you. Do you understand, Henry? Henry blinked as his manager's words brought him back to reality. He turned to face the red-faced man. Sure thing, I'll get right on it. Apparently unsatisfied with his response, the sniff-necked manager left the aisle with a huff. He didn't know what the manager was upset about this time, but that was his usual response when his boss was angry. Henry felt relieved when he was left alone. The store initially hired him as a cashier. He tried to do his best, but his people skills were subpar. His boss didn't take long to give Henry a new position. Now, he was in charge of stocking and sorting the shelves. It was a peaceful job, except when customers asked him where certain products were. If he had to listen to another customer asking him where the sour cream was again, Henry shook his head at the thought. That was one of the things about people that bugged him. They never even seemed to attempt to look for stuff themselves. It seemed they thought their time was more valuable than his own. During his first few days of employment, the other staff would ask him many questions. "Hey, how's it going? Did you catch the game last night? Why do you just stare off into space sometimes?" Henry would always answer their questions the same way. "I can't talk right now." They seemed to catch on that he didn't want to speak to them. His mind had more important subjects to think about. He only took this job because Henry thought he could think about life from a different perspective. His real work had been stalling for some time now. Henry just felt like he needed some inspiration to propel him forward. That was what he hoped to achieve working at a grocery store. So far, all he had achieved was to get a piercing headache anytime he spoke to anyone. As he stocked the shelves, trying to remember how they had trained him, he yearned for something society said was wrong. He checked his wristwatch and saw it was 4:45 p.m., almost halfway done. Soon, Henry could pursue his real passion. Time went by in a blur for Henry. It was 5, then 6, then 7. And before he knew it, it was almost time for him to leave. He looked at the shelves and saw they were all in perfect order. All that would be left for him to do now was clock out and walk out the front door. Most people would then get into their cars and drive home to their families. Henry had no family, at least none that were still alive. That thought used to pain him when he was a kid, but thinking about it now, he felt nothing. He had gotten used to living alone. Besides, since he was alone, no one could disturb his work. Henry had been watching one of his co-workers for the past few weeks, a bright and full of life young female who would be attending a well-known college in the spring. If overheard gossip was to be believed, she had a promising future. She was, however, known to be promiscuous. Everyone at work knew about it, and every time her boyfriend would come to pick her up, Henry could feel the tension in the air. Some guys she had been intimate with even worked at the grocery store. Many of their co-workers would show disgust with the woman, but Henry didn't have an opinion. He was more curious about it than anything. A woman who seemingly has a perfect life does something consistently to jeopardize everything. It fascinates him. That was why tonight he was not going to be going straight home. Henry already had everything planned in his mind. He just needed to wait. And patience was one of his strong suits, if nothing else. Henry walked to the back of the building and observed the woman, Ashley. She was going about her usual end-of-shift routine, seemingly without care. Once Henry had clocked out, He pretended to be doing some paperwork. Essentially, he was just stalling for time until Ashley was finished talking to the other employees. As the minutes passed, Henry wondered what she could be talking about for so long. That was another thing that Henry had trouble understanding. Small talk. What was the point of talking about subjects both sides knew the answers to, but pretended they didn't? It utterly baffled him. This was why his work was so necessary. Soon, 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 I will have another piece to the puzzle. I know I am so close to understanding, so close to knowing what makes a person a person. I just need more experiments, more time. Finally, he saw a woman with 2 blonde pigtails and wearing her uniform with modifications, revealing more of her body than was appropriate. Looking at her, even Henry could see why all the guys went for her. She was fit, perky, and seemed to be, on the outside, a ray of positive energy. However, he wasn't interested in any of that, because his interest in her came from a different place. "Okay, see you guys later." Ashley said this, and waved goodbye to everyone she had been talking to. They waved at her and said an unsynchronized goodbye. After moments, Henry got up and put away the papers he had been pretending to read. He saw that no one was watching and left out the back door. His car was parked in the parking lot, and he got inside. Ashley was still in clear view as she walked down the sidewalk. With a turn of his key, his car came to life. Henry knew the exact path she would take to get home. The key to any good plan is careful calculations, after all. He went the opposite way, instead of driving behind her and potentially being seen by a coworker. From his planning, he knew there was a spot where he could park his car and wait for her to walk by. Then, he would say he was having car trouble and ask to use her phone. As he drove to the spot, his lips moved upward into a smile. During his actual work was the only time he felt any real emotions. For the time being, he couldn't help the smile on his face, nor did he want to. However, once it was time to begin, he would be stoic and show nothing. The spot was empty, as Henry knew it would be. He carefully drove the car in and shut off the engine. Now, there was some time before she would arrive. It was perfect, allowing him to start the entry in his black book. Henry opened his glove box and felt around for it. His fingers touched a firm edge and the black book's distinctive leather texture. The answers to Henry's questions were within its pages, and it was his life's work. He felt like she could be the one to fit all the pieces together. Sighing as he opened the book, he knew he had thought those exact thoughts before. No. No. She is different. I am confident she is the one. My work is almost complete. Then I can rest. Yes, relax and enjoy life. Enjoy? What does that mean? Have I ever enjoyed anything? Yes, my work brings me joy. Henry violently shook his head in an attempt to clear his thoughts. He checked his wristwatch and knew Ashley should be passing by any minute now. The car door creaked as Henry opened it, and the ground beneath his feet made a crunching noise as he exited the car. His senses were always heightened as when he was working. Then he heard the distinctive sound of approaching footsteps. I know, right? You won't believe what she said to me after that. Her voice echoed through the night sky, and the words' high-pitched tone hurt Henry's head. He popped the hood of the car and grabbed his work bag. Pulling a rag out of it and dousing it in a potent knockout agent, he felt calm. Henry hid the rag in his pocket and bent over the engine, pretending to examine it. When Ashley saw Henry, she jumped at first. Then she saw who it was and seemed only to get more startled. Henry pretended not to notice her for a moment. Using his best acting skills, he looked up at her and put a surprised look on his face. Oh, hey, Ashley. Yeah, my car just sort of crapped out. I've been trying to see what's wrong with it, but I might be out of my league here. He could see her hesitate, and Henry thought she might just turn and run. Maybe her survival instincts were telling her to flee for her life. Ultimately, she seemed to take a breath and compose herself. Did you need any help? You would help me? A strange man in a dark alley? She chuckled at that, and that confused Henry. He genuinely asked her that question, and she thought he was joking. Was it because they worked together, leading her to believe she knew him somehow? In the end, Henry didn't know. Do you need help or not? I got to meet up with someone soon. Of course, that would be great. Thank you. Can you just hold a light over here so I can see the engine better? Sure. She opened her phone and turned on its flashlight. Ashley approached the car's hood and held the light high to expose the engine. Let me just grab a wrench. 1 second. Henry went around to the back of the car and pulled the rag out of his pocket. That was when it happened, and it didn't surprise Henry. His vision started to turn red, and his head began to tremble. His ears began to ring, and he had to hold on to the car as dizziness suddenly overtook him. The symptoms only got worse and worse until he blacked out. When he came to, he was sitting in the front seat of his car with his black book in hand. He sifted through the book, remembering where he got it. It was at a yard sale, of all places, where he first saw the black book. The book seemed to call to him with its ornately designed cover. Immediately, he went over and picked it up. He remembered thinking that this book was what he had been missing his whole life. Henry gave the owner whatever insignificant amount of money they had wanted and left. That was the day his life had truly begun. Now, he had a passion for his work, his genuine work. Focusing on the present moment, he opened the book and read its most recent entry, Participant 264. Name: Ashley. Perky, attractive, promiscuous, naive, trusting, deceitful, social. Performed fingernail removal on both hands. She screamed in agony for several minutes, surprisingly. Then, she became silent. After a few minutes of silence, I proceeded with a finger removal. This elicited intense emotions from the participant, which went on for several minutes. After I removed all the fingers and the screaming and pleading stopped, more work was required. Starting from the wrist, I cut the skin and peeled it back all the way to the elbow. I took great care to ensure the patient didn't black out from blood loss. The results of the experiments had to be seen on the patient's face. This continued until there was no more skin on both her arms. At this point, the participant was slipping in and out of consciousness, and I knew it was time to end the experiment. I used an axe I bought from a camping store, and placing her head against the floor, decapitated her in 2 swings. It would have been 1 swing, but I lost my footing. It was very unprofessional, and I will take care to prevent this in the future. In conclusion, Ashley was an interesting subject, but not the one. She would not be the one to answer my questions. More experiments to follow. Henry sighed after he finished reading. He closed the book and put it back in his glove box. Looks like the book didn't find what it was looking for. When Henry tried to remember his life before the Black Book, he couldn't. If he tried to recall the memories, a great pain would follow. That doesn't matter to me anymore. I am not that person anymore. Move on. Wait a second. Maybe what I need is a fresh start. Just me and my book together. Yes, a new name and a new life. This town is getting old, and inspiration is lacking. Yes, yes, yes. He shook his head until the thoughts stopped, then rubbed his eyes. Henry checked his wristwatch and saw it was almost 6 a.m. They would soon be looking for participant 264, and the idea made Henry chuckle. There was no way they would ever find her. He had made sure of that. That didn't matter to him, though. He needed to look toward the future, for he was one step closer to knowing the value of a person's life.